Good afternoon, class. I thought I'd give a brief week 3 lecture as it relates to the illustration essay that will be due here on June 12th, which is not this Sunday, but the next. Remember, quiz 2 is actually due this Sunday, which is June 5th. And if you remember, and I'm going to show this briefly, I sent out an email, I think it was last Wednesday or last Thursday, that details a little bit what quiz 2 is going to be about. I gave you some Khan Academy videos to sort of look at as it relates to, it's mainly grammar this time. You're going to have about a paragraph that you have to correct the grammar in it as it relates to these concepts, meaning fragments, run-ons, comma splices, subject-verb agreement, verb tense, capitalization, and appositives. If you've been keeping up the reading in your e-text, there's some additional information about all those concepts. There are some practice exercises in your e-text if you want to practice a little bit more about recognizing and how to correct those. The only bad thing about the e-text is that they don't give you any answers, so it's hard to check to see if you're doing anything correctly in that case. If you want to make sure that you are doing some of those correctly, you can always email me the page number and the question that you're doing, and you can give me your particular answer, and I can tell you whether you're right or wrong or how to go about fixing that. If you want to, it's more or less like a study guide. It's optional. I'm not going to pick up any of that as homework or as a grade. It's just mainly for your own knowledge. If you go back to your Blackboard course page, if you click up in this top folder, you may find some stuff in there. I don't think really that's grammar related, so let's go back. If you go to your week 3 and week 4 illustration folder, if you scroll down, okay, where is this stuff at? I probably need to bring it over, and I probably didn't do that. Let's see. Yeah, I'll bring this over. The rhetoric and composition stuff and the grammar folder, so let me move this over real quick so you can have that in case you need it. Because in this grammar folder, you will find, again, the same concepts, basically, that we are covering for this particular quiz. So let me see if it went in there now. And it did. It's here at the bottom, so I'm going to see if I can move it up a little bit. So if you go into the grammar folder, you will find fragments, run-ons, comma splices. I'll give you another handout, parallelism, appositives, capitalization, subject-verb agreement, different verb forms and tenses. And it basically covers the grammar that you will be quizzed on throughout this semester and the grammar that you would want to be cognizant of and be able to, recognize and fix on your essay, so you're not losing any points with that. So if you go back, if you looked at the topics earlier, there was only one topic, and I started realizing that topic, it was a little bit more of a challenge because you had to deal with poetry and a couple, literary critic. And I just, with a 10-week course, that I think that was a little bit pushing it, making it a little bit more difficult on everybody. So what I did was I uploaded and changed. I gave you additional topics. I took that one out. So you have a little bit more to choose from than you did with the montage essay. So everything is still pretty much the same. It's still going to be illustration, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means here momentarily. If you look through here, both the Mansfield and Brill and Rogers, The Hidden Life of Garbage, has a lot to do with illustration. So they're really good professional examples, meaning these folks have been published and made money with their writing, dealing with illustration. So if you want to look at, illustration piece that's actually been published, those two are really good to look at. As I say, the quiz 2 is right here. Remember, it's password sensitive, so this is your password. You have to sort of type that in as it is to be able to get to the next, basically to be able to complete the quiz. You will have 30 minutes, so make sure that you read the instructions correctly and follow what they want you to basically do. And as you can tell, the SA2 Dropbox is there as well. Keep in mind, generally, I don't like to take late work just because, a 10-week course, it's really compressed. As it gets closer to the end of our semester, basically the month of July, I'm not really going to be able to take late work as much just because we're not going to have, after our summer break, the first week of July, we're only going to have 3 weeks to finish stuff. And that's especially where we end the class with the research paper, and then you have a final exam essay, which we will talk a little bit more. It's your second self-reflection, and we will talk momentarily about what essay 3 is, because essay 3 is your midterm essay, and it's the Proctoru Event. I sent out an email and put some stuff on your announcement page that talks through. It's sort of this similar stuff that you should have seen or read about on your course syllabus, but I just put that out there so you can go through and look at the various videos and handouts to get ready as far as the setup goes, because you're going to have to get the Proctoru extension browser extension on your laptop or your desktop. And as it gets closer to week 5, because that's when that's going to be due, you're only going to have a window of from like Sunday to Thursday by 6 o'clock that evening to be able to turn that in. And again, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that next week, just because it will be due before the following Thursday. So again, don't necessarily freak out so much about that. Concentrate on getting your quiz 2 in and working on SA2 for the 12th of June. So the other thing I was going to show you that I recently sent out, and I sent out another deal about Mla Format on the 18th of May, which had a model, again, sort of like a visual formatting guide, but it also had a video, I think, of how to format your essays in Mla 9 style. But this actually goes a little bit more, I think, in depth. It basically tells you what you need to have for each one of your papers that you write in this class, because we are basically using the Mla 9 edition. That's the newest edition of Mla. When we get to this page, really with the works cited, that's going to deal with your research paper, which we will talk a little bit more about after midterm in a couple weeks. But everything else, like you need a heading, you need to follow the font, usually Times New Roman 12 size font. You want to double space everything. You don't want to have any extra space between paragraphs. You want to make sure that at the top right-hand corner of every single one of your page, your last name, whatever that is, and the number is there. You want to have a title to your paper that really reflects the writing to come. You want to indent paragraphs by 1 tab. And again, when we get into parenthetical citation, block quoting, paraphrasing, we will talk about that sort of about the middle of June, because that's when we're going to be really into research paper mode. The margins, if you're using Microsoft Word, should be already set at 1 inch on all sides, so you don't really have to mess around with your margins. But everything else, some folks were losing points with SA1 because I guess they didn't watch the video or they didn't see the email, and they just sort of sent me a essay in various formats. So from here on out, make sure that you're using this format so you're not losing really easy points that could be avoided losing by just following the instructions. So let's see here. Let's look at the topics. or at least let's bring up and look at some of the directions. I'm not going to read the topics per se because I know everybody knows how to read, but we may look at them. They're fairly short. I'll give you 5 topics. This particular paper, again, needs to be 4 pages or 1,000 words, whatever comes first for you. It's due by 11:59 as a Microsoft Word attachment, Sunday, June 12th. So again, not this Sunday, but the Sunday after. So you have about a 2-week period, basically, if you started this earlier in the week. The topics, like I said, you have 5. Choose 1 out of the 5. 1 is explain what fears have to teach us. 2, explain the 3 main ways students can stay safe when going to college parties. 3, discuss some of the life lessons that playing sports can teach a person. 4, describe the psychology of a psychopath. And 5, describe how to make the best cheeseburger. Now, granted, you may or may not need to get secondary resources, research, because again, this is not the research paper. But if you do use secondary material and you quote from others, say from a journal or a book or a YouTube video or a website, there is a proper way how you want to style that so you're not getting flagged for plagiarism, which again, if going back to the syllabus during week 1, the first offense, if you do cheat or plagiarize a paper, will be a 0. The second, hopefully nobody will go that far with it, but the second chance that you get caught with it, you basically fail the course. So if you're unsure, if you're using quotes from various places, and you're unsure if you're doing it right, again, you have the option to send as many drafts as possible to me in Smart Thinking before you turn your final draft in, and just make note and say, hey, am I quoting this right? Am I paraphrasing this right? Am I summarizing this right? And we will, look at that. Otherwise, we will look at, the whole deal with plagiarism and using sources as it gets closer to the research paper aspect of the course. But this is pretty much it. Again, I have several essay 1s left to grade. I have graded some, so if you check, you should have comments that you can download and look at. Most of them that I've read have been really well written. So the grades, I'm hoping the first essay, the grade is really strong for you heading into, week 4 and week 5, because like I said, week 5 will be our midterm. So we're basically going to be halfway through our semester and here in about 2 weeks. So the deal was about some of these earlier essays. Like it says with some of, I think I put it on the first one. I will accept late work to a degree. Like I said, after we get back from summer break, probably not going to have that luxury to do so because we're only going to have 3 weeks to finish up whatever we have to finish up. But, some folks turned essay 1 in 1 or 2 days late. So here's the deal with that. With these earlier essays, let's say something comes up and you are not going to be able to turn in essay 2 on time. Well, each day that you're late, I'm taking 10 points away. So if you're 3 days late, let's say this is due on Sunday, but you don't turn it in until Wednesday, well, the highest you can make at that point now is a 70. Granted, everything else is correct in it. So as it goes a little later, right, probably about after the 3rd or 4th day, it's just going to be marked as a 0, because at that point, you're already losing points. If you turn it in 5 or 6 days after the fact, you're basically in the 40 or 50 point range anyway. That's enough. So the best deal is to either turn it in earlier, because these drop boxes are usually up about a week or so earlier than most, so you don't have to wait until the time that it's due to turn it in. Again, I would strongly suggest that you let Smart Thinking, me, or multiple people look at your work at least, so you can keep, if you did really well on your first essay and you want to sort of keep that grade average or increase it, you probably wanted to have people proofread and look at your work. Otherwise, just know if you're late, you're going to be losing. Basically, the 10 points is like a letter grade. You're losing a letter grade each day that you're late. So if you're 2 days late, you basically go from it's basically you're missing 20 points. So you go from an A to basically a B minus, because at that point the highest you could get is an 80. So you don't want to get in that habit early on. The essay grades, the percentage wise, are not really that heavy, but as we get later into the semester, if you start, getting poor grades on some of these earlier assignments, it's going to come back and haunt you and sort of bite you on the butt, especially because as we get closer to the end of June and all of July, the assignments are worth a little bit more because you're having to do more with them. Not to say they're any more difficult or challenging. They just, use a good bit of your time. And if you, kind of got some bad grades the first 3 or 4 weeks of class, and then you start really dropping off because you're just so tired and burned out, you want to do other things, and you start getting poor grades on the remaining assignments, your grade is really, it's not going to be going this way, it's going to be going like this. So you don't want that to happen to you. They're really, honestly, I think it's fairly silly for anybody to have to retake this class, because I with the 10-minute or 10-week period, I try to give you at least 2 weeks or so in between major writing components are due. The quizzes, you can fairly well do those within a week if you prepare, use your time, read the stuff, study, look at the handouts, watch the videos, whatever the case may be, ask for questions. The essays, I give you a little bit more time because I know there's a little bit more involved. But again, unless there's just something, really bad that sort of comes up, you have too much on your plate, you got too many classes, you're working, you got kids, sicknesses, illnesses, deaths, that type of stuff, unless you just have to sort of withdraw yourself because of those issues, I don't really see why, as long as you turn your work in and you're following instructions and you're asking for help and you're sending drafts, why nobody can't pass this class with a C or higher. It really boils down to the quality of work and if you're turning stuff in. I mean, if you start missing deadlines, of course, you're going to get zeros on those. If you turn in work that's not really up to par to previous work, it's just sort of, let's say, AKA half-assed, then your grade's not going to be as good as it was, say, the first couple weeks. So the key thing is to sort of pace yourself, do a little bit each day. Clearly, if you're like me, you do have a life. You're married. You got multiple. I have 2 kids. I got 2 daughters. So, and I teaching other classes. So, what I'm trying to say is, you don't have to devote every single waking breath to this particular class, because you generally have, within, if you looked at how I set up the lessons, you basically have a 14-day period to do that particular genre of writing. So it's 2 weeks for the most part. You have a little bit more time when we get into the research aspect because that's a little bit more demanding. And you're going to really need to know how to do the research paper as we, for future classes, not just in English, but psychology, nursing has papers that they have to do, history, that type deal. So just pace yourself, reach out, ask questions, get the help that you need. If you need to come see me for in-person tutoring, just email me. We can set up a schedule or time. If you want to do something more on Teams, we can do something that way. We can talk over the phone if that's easier. But again, if you want me to actually look at something paper-wise, that's going to be kind of a challenge. It's hard to really discuss where things are going wrong in your paper over the phone. So, but you just have to kind of let me know. I can't read minds, so if you need help, you need to please, just reach out, and I will assist you as much as I can. Granted, don't wait until like 3 hours before SA2 is due to finally reach out and say, I really don't know what I'm doing, when you had 13 days to get help. So use a little bit of common sense. Again, if you go to the announcements, before we talk a little bit more about the illustration essay, if you look, I posted some stuff up here earlier. This was what I was talking about as it relates to the Proctoru event, which is going to be your third essay. It's a midterm essay. Basically, it's going to open up on midnight, June 12th, and it's going to stay open until Thursday, June 16th, 6 o'clock p.m. So if you read over this, if you click on various hyperlinks, it's going to take you to various other areas that you need to read. This is some stuff that the school might have sent you out earlier. You can click and read these PDFs to sort of get you set up, but you have to have a Proctoru account set up and the app. And if you look here, it looks like a little owl. And we will talk a little bit more about how to go about doing Proctoru. But really what the Proctoru essay, essay 3 is your first reflection, basically a self-reflection of what, in an overview, it's basically what have you learned from the first 5 weeks in this course. And again, as we get closer to week 5, there is a particular topic that has a series of questions that you might want to try to answer, or at least include in your essay. In the past, I have had this where students would basically have 60 minutes and type the thing by scratch. This time, I think I'm going to try it a little bit differently. I'm going to give you the opportunity to go ahead and sort of write it out and save it, as a Microsoft Word document. You just have to go through the Proctoru so they can see your pretty face and see your government issue ID, because we got to verify that the student submitting the file is the same student on the ID, so on and so forth. So you basically will have 60 minutes to submit that file once you click begin on the Proctoru. So that may take a little bit of the worry out. You won't have to necessarily have 1 hour to sit there and type. We will see how well this works. If it works really well for this class, I may just start doing that for my future classes. But I'm just thinking, because it's a quick semester, this would probably be the best way to approach that. I will go over the guidelines a little bit more about the third essay, the self-reflection, next week. So it shouldn't be that bad, I don't think, as long as you sort of prep and plan beforehand and you get it in by 6 o'clock on the 16th of June. This is one of those things, because the college pays for that particular test, everybody only has one chance. So you can't be late on this particular assignment. You have to do it by the time that is scheduled, or you just have to take the 0. But we'll talk a little bit more about that as it gets closer. Let's look a little bit at illustration essay. And basically, the illustration essay provides an explanation of a general principle or idea by using a number of well-chosen examples. Illustration is one of the most frequently used methods in writing. So we're looking at our second sort of piece of genre or rhetorical writing, especially when the writer wants to impart new or unfamiliar information. So going back to those topics, right, you should be able to talk on some of these at fairly good length without doing a whole lot of research. The one that might give you, I wouldn't say give you any problems, but it would be kind of a challenge, unless you got a psychology degree, to talk about, to write about number 4 without adding some research. So that might be the one. If you don't want to do a whole heck of a lot of work, if you don't want to go out and have to do a whole lot of research with this particular essay, then I would choose either 1, 2, 3, or 5. Now, in the past, I've also gave students the opportunity. There is a 6th topic there that's not really written. It's called the writer's choice, meaning if you don't like the 5 topics here that I offer you, but you have one in mind that will fit what you need to do with the illustration essay, I don't mind you doing it, but you have to sort of get the green light and get it cleared by me before you get started, because I don't want you to get started on something. It sounds like a good idea in your mind and on paper, But when you actually start typing it, you only get 2 pages and not 4. So now you're having to either make up a bunch of crap, which I don't want you to do because that's a waste of everybody's time, or you're going to have to throw your dart at the board again and try to find out pick a better or different topic. And by that time, you may only have a few days before this thing is due. So if you have a different topic in mind that deals with illustration, then I would suggest that you start emailing me so we can start talking and discussing about it before you get into some of those pitfalls that's going to just cause you to have a massive migraine when you didn't really need to have that migraine. So how to write an illustration essay. There's a lot of different ways to approach this. You can look in your e-text. They may give you somewhat of a template. There probably is a sample paper in there that's probably about the same length. Yours needs to be about 3 pages or so. You can do a Google search. Those are always good. You can go to YouTube to kind of look at that too. But choose a general idea to illustrate. So in this particular slide, they give you some examples. Again, these are just examples. You can kind of expand on those with or use them as a sort of a jumping off board for your own topic. Happy are those who are content. Teaching is a demanding profession. Smiling is the communication of the soul. So after you have sort of a general idea, which most of those topics, those 5 topics that we looked at recently are pretty much general ideas type deals, you want to use specific examples to illustrate those ideas. So employ senses of sight, sound, smell, touch, or taste to enhance the vividness of examples. So you're going to use your 5 senses as much as you can. Some topics will lend themselves more than others. But if you're smart, you can develop a paragraph out of each one of these senses, if possible. Now, some things you're not just going to be able to taste all the time. So you may have to double up and do, maybe 2 paragraphs on sight or 2 paragraphs on sound. But if you look, because there's, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, you got 5. That's basically 5 body paragraphs. You have your introduction with your thesis statement, and then you have a conclusion. If you're able to use all 5 of your senses, you basically have at least a 7 paragraph essay, which will give you, that either the word count, which is 1,000 pages, or it will bring you up to 4 pages. You might want to use facts, anecdotes, personal experiences for concrete detail. Depending on your topic. Introduction is basically like any other introduction like you did for the first essay. It's going to introduce your topic, whatever that topic is of those 5. You may want to have provide a transitional statement going from sort of the hook or the topic sentence of that introduction paragraph, leading your reader and your audience, in this case would be me, or smart thinking if you let them look at your work, or anybody else that's going to look at your work, into your thesis statement. And your thesis statement needs to be that 1 sentence at the very end of your introduction paragraph that provides the statement which you will illustrate in the essay. So it's basically like the main enchilada of that entire 4 pages or that entire 1,000 words. It's the main idea of that particular paper. The body paragraphs, like I said, here they basically use that hamburger essay, the 3 body paragraphs. You want to extend beyond that as much as you can, but they're sort of going to follow the same format. Each one of these paragraphs will, because you're going to start with a topic sentence. You're going to have some supporting details after the topic sentence, and then you're going to have some sort of conclusion or closing remarks that are sort of going to segue into your next particular body paragraph. So you can kind of use, this sort of skeleton outline of a traditional essay or a high school essay to help you build into something a little bit more grander, in this case, using more paragraphs. The conclusion, though, needs to restate your thesis statement and then emphasize the importance of your topic. So I'm hoping, based on these 5 topics, that you have a little bit more of a creative niche with it. You have fun with it. I'm hoping the first essay wasn't too terribly bad, even though there was really only one topic. I think that topic was somewhat universal, though. Everybody could kind of relate to an essential object at some point in their life. And as you grow older, you're going to have more essential objects. Some you're going to pass off into, your kids, family heirlooms, that type deal. Like I said, the one that I originally had planned for this one, I think was just a little bit more of a real challenge for everybody, because I'd have to go through and talk a little bit more about the Romanticism period, look at Coleridge's poem, and I don't want to give y'all more work to do than what we have to basically cover in the standards. So, if this was a 15-week course, we probably would have looked at that particular topic a little bit more. I'm thinking that these 5 topics, after you pick one within the 2-week frame that you have to do, is much more doable. You can have a little bit more fun. I mean, describe how to make the best cheeseburger. I mean, how many people don't like cheeseburgers? And pretty much everybody has had a cheeseburger at one point in their life, probably more than just one. And how many people haven't cooked a cheeseburger? I'm sure we've all have cooked a cheeseburger at least once, probably 25 times, 2,500 times, maybe, depending on how old you are. But that's something there you can have a little bit of creative fun with. You could still be formal, professional, following the format and the style, make sure the grammar, but you can have a little bit of fun with that one. It won't be that, same old dry, stuffy academic essay that most folks think, well, we're going to have to do essays in this class. They're going to be boring, dry, and all that stuff. I try to find topics that everybody can sort of relate to in some ways. Again, the first one, fear. We all have our own fears. Some of us are a fear of heights. Some of us are a fear of hurricanes. Granted that, hurricane season just started this week. Some of us are a fear of, still sort of a fear of the dark. So when the power goes out because of a tornado watch or because of a hurricane, I mean, there's only so much we can do to get that power back on if you don't have a generator or anything. You can use candles, but if you don't have candles, you're kind of stuck. If it's not daylight outside and it's pure darkness, you're still in the dark. We've all been to pop parties. It doesn't necessarily have to be college parties. It could be high school parties. It could just be regular, company parties. As we have seen over the last few years, sometimes it's not safe to go to these by yourself. Folks have been kidnapped, getting into wrong Lyft and Uber cars, thinking they're Uber cars or Lyft. And I think I remember back maybe a year, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was a college student, I think outside of, I think it was somewhere in North Carolina or South Carolina. She was leaving a party or leaving a club or something, and she called an Uber. And I guess she was all out of it because she's been drinking, whatever the case may be, tired. And she got into a car that pulled up next to her. It wasn't the Uber driver that she actually, called. It was somebody kind of pretending to be the Uber at the time. And he picked her up and basically locked all the doors and everything. And she was they found her, I think maybe a couple of days or a week later, but she wasn't alive anymore. So, you got to be careful these days, especially if you got kids going to college, like dorms and that type deal, Georgia Southern, Valdosta. You just never know anymore who you can trust, what type of people. You just got to be alert. Life lessons that by playing sports can teach a person. If you are a person that likes to play football, tennis, golf, basketball, whatever the case may be, there are some life lessons in that. Volleyball, any of that type stuff. If you're an athlete, you might be able to really connect to number 3 a little bit more. Again, like I said, the whole deal about describing the psychology of a psychopath, you may have to do a little bit more digging, a little bit more research, because unless you're sort of a buff on psychology and psychopaths, you're probably not going to be able to pull, credible stuff right out of your head right off the top. I mean, I couldn't do it. I'd have to go and do a little bit of research on that stuff. I mean, I know what a psychopath is, but as far as making it sound decent and really polished, I would have to do a little bit of my own background reading and that type stuff. All right, so that's pretty much week 3, and what would basically carry on to week 4. So next week when we do a video, I'm just going to sort of focus on Essay 3 as it relates to the Proctoru stuff. And after the 12th, the weeks 5 through 6 folder will open up. As you can tell, it's not going to be open up on your end, but if you're looking ahead, this is sort of what's ahead. The 3rd quiz will be due on Tuesday, the 21st of June, which again is some additional grammar concepts. We'll talk a little bit more about those as it gets closer. You do have an Essay 4. There's some topics there. That's going to be due right before we go to summer break, which would be July 3rd. So we'll talk a little bit more about that particular topic or those topics as it gets closer. But right now, I would just focus on the week 3 through 4 stuff, getting that second quiz in by this Sunday, 11:59, and then getting your Essay 2 in by 11:59 on June 12th. Now, as it relates to drafts and that type stuff, I will probably have to cut when I can look at them off by midnight June 10th, which is a Friday. It's not this Friday, but next. Now, you still have a couple days. If you think you can submit it to Smart Thinking and they can get it back to you before the deadline, by all means do that. Sometimes they're pretty quick, depending on how busy they are. Sometimes I'm not really sure. I mean, I haven't heard anything. I'm sure there's people that work for Smart Thinking over the weekend. But if you're worried about not getting it back in time, I probably would send them a draft and send me a draft before midnight on June 10th. That way we have at least a day or two that we can kind of look over it and be able to send it back so you can have enough time to fix it and turn it in before that deadline. Otherwise, I hope everybody, being that we're going into our 4th week, which basically means we've been here for about a month. I know there's several people because we originally started with nearly 25 people in this class, and we're down to about 10 now. And some of that is because they just no-showed the first week, and then there were some that realized starting week 2 that life has sort of kicked in. They got a lot of other things going on their plate, and they just realized that a 10-week course online is just not going to be a right fit for them. So keep in mind that we do offer this class annually. It's offered each semester, both in person and online. Some folks like the whole deal about the in-person deal because it's easier to ask questions. We're talking with the instructor, that type deal. The fall and spring semesters are usually 16 weeks, 15 to 16 weeks in length. So you have about 3.5, 4 months. We're basically doing what they do, 3.5, 4 months in 2 months. So everything's sort of a fast pace. It's hot. People want to do vacations because COVID and everything kind of knocked that out for the last couple of years. Your kids are out. I understand all of that stuff. You just have to get to the point where you have to decide if you can really handle a 10-week online course or not. If not, then the quicker you kind of basically convince yourself that you can't, and don't beat yourself up over it, because again, you have other opportunities to take this course. I will say though, because you're probably going for a diploma rather than a degree, because this is a 1010 course, you still would need this course before you can graduate. So this is sort of like that foundations of math. You still need that course before you can graduate. So, and it doesn't matter whether you transfer to another college, they're going to want you to take probably one math and one particular English before you can get that diploma. I mean, most even degree level class or degree levels, you generally have to take one or two English and maths. So just sort of keep that in mind, because if you withdraw this, it may kind of delay you graduating on time. But I also understand there are reasons why folks have to withdraw, and I don't take it personal. So you have to do what's going to work best for you in your personal career, your financial career, your academic career. And you only know how much you can handle. I can tell you summer classes are generally, they're good and bad. There's pros and cons in them. I mean, you got 10 weeks and you're done. You won't have to do it, have to do it again. I'm teaching a couple classes now for TRF here in Canada that are basically 5 weeks in length. So we already had sort of our midterm, and they basically have 3 more weeks left, and then they're done for that particular term. So those classes are a little bit even more of a challenge, because it's like you're doing about 3 weeks worth of work in one. So it's rough. Summer is rough at times. All right. So unless there's any other further questions, like I said, my email is always open. I do check it throughout the week and weekend. I will get back with you with an answer as quickly as I can. If not, like I said, I hope everybody has a great rest of the week, great weekend, and I look forward to see everybody during week 4. Have a blessed one.